All right, so I actually lied. Before we go on to the next section of the course, I wanted to add one more hands-on demo that I think does a really good job showcasing how you can combine these different stats functions to do some really interesting things. And in the demo that we're about to walk through, we're going to combine the COUNTIF function, which we just talked about, with that strange and mysterious SUMPRODUCT function to actually count the number of duplicate items between two lists. So go ahead and open up your section 4 workbook. You should see this orange tab at the end, COUNTIF and SUMPRODUCT. If you don't, it means you're using an older version of the file. Go ahead and jump to your course dashboard, download a fresh copy of that workbook, and you should be good to go. And what we're looking at here are the grocery lists for two roommates, Ben and Jerry. And both Ben and Jerry are going grocery shopping today, and the last thing that we want is for them to both purchase the same item for the apartment. So this will be a great opportunity to use a cell function to actually count any duplicate items that exist in both Ben's list in column B and Jerry's list in column D. Now, before we go crazy and start just typing SUMPRODUCT and COUNTIF functions right here in cell F3, what I like to do when I'm kind of pursuing these more advanced techniques or formulas is break them down into their most basic component pieces. Make sure I understand those components really, really well, and then assemble them into the final result. And so that's exactly what we're going to do here. So we're going to start by just adding some workspace here. I'm going to right click, insert a new column, and just stretch out E and F. This is going to be kind of our sandbox, our working space, which we'll end up deleting before we finish. And the second thing that I'm going to do just as we get prepped is instead of referencing these lists as cell references like B3 through B25, let's give them some meaningful names. That's going to help simplify things and make our formulas more readable. So using that name box right to the left of the formula bar, we're going to just type Ben because I've got Ben's list selected and press enter. Same thing with Jerry. I'm going to select cells D3 through D25. We'll call that one Jerry. All right, now there are two ways we can solve this problem. We can either figure out the number of duplicates in Ben's list that exist in Jerry's, or we can figure out the duplicates that exist in Jerry's list from Ben's. And it's kind of two sides of the same coin. We're going to get the same result, but we can use two variations of the formula to do that. So for the sake of example, let's walk through both. I'm just going to add some headers here. First, we're going to say duplicates in Ben's list, and then copy and paste that header and change the Ben to Jerry. Duplicates in Jerry's list. And to calculate these duplicates, we're going to use just the COUNTIF function. Pretty straightforward. We're going to say equals COUNTIF, and we need a range and a criteria. So in this case, duplicates that exist within Ben's list, we're basically searching Jerry's list, and I can either drag and select, and it will update to our named range Jerry, or I can simply start typing Jerry, and I'll see it's populating there in my IntelliSense box. I can tab it in. So I'm searching within Jerry's list, and the criteria is the first item in Ben's list. It feels a little bit backwards, but you'll see what I mean. When we close this out and press enter, drag this formula down, what's going on here is that Excel is checking each item in Ben's list. It's comparing it against the entire range containing Jerry's list, and it's returning a count of the number of instances. So if that item, Washington cranberry juice, does not exist in Jerry's list, we'll see a 0. Any item that does exist, we'll see a 1. So at first glance, this tells us that we've got some duplicates. Green Ribbon canned peaches also appears in Jerry's list. Blue Label fancy canned oysters, woof, also appears in Jerry's list. And it looks like one other duplicate, which is Club string cheese. Okay, so by simply selecting that range, you might start to realize that we can simply take the sum, which is the 3, and that does give us the answer that we need, the number of duplicate items. There are 3. And that would be just fine. That gets us what we need, but we're going to get a little bit more elegant here And the first thing that we're going to do is actually change this reference of B3 to our named range that we called Ben. And by doing this, even though we're referencing that full grocery list each time, when we drag this function down, we'll get the same exact array of ones and zeros, even though we're not referencing B3, B4, B5, B6, etc. So we're able to simplify things a bit by simply referencing each of the two named ranges. And now, very similar process if we want to flip the coin here and count duplicates in Jerry's list. In fact, we can copy and paste that function from E3, and all we're going to do is reverse the order here. Now we're checking within Ben's list each item that exists in Jerry's. Press enter, drag it down, and you'll notice two interesting things here. First is that you still get this array of ones and zeros, but the ones are located on different rows. Club string cheese, green ribbon canned peaches, and those fancy canned oysters. So it's the same three products, gives us that same sum of 3, but it's calling out the rows in the location that they exist in Jerry's list versus the location that they exist in Ben's list. So regardless of which list we use as our source list, or our first argument in the COUNTIF function, we're going to get the correct answer. Now, all we need to do is basically sum up the results of that COUNTIF function to boil it down into our single answer, which in this case we know will be 3 products. And that's where SUMPRODUCT comes into play. So right here in G3, let's start with a SUMPRODUCT. And now instead of pointing to specific arrays, we're going to embed that same COUNTIF function, either one that we wrote in columns E or F. So start with Ben or start with Jerry, doesn't matter. Close off 2 parentheses, and that should do the trick. So essentially, within this SUMPRODUCT function, we're embedding that whole matrix of values, and then SUMPRODUCT is adding all those values up within one single cell. So press enter. Boom, there you go. We have our answer of 3 products. And check it out. Instead of writing, 22 functions here in 22 cells, we've achieved the same thing using one single function, and that's the power of SUMPRODUCT. So with that, we actually don't need these cells anymore. We can delete those, and we still have our duplicate item count of 3. So there you have it. That's kind of your crash course in how you can combine COUNTIF and SUMPRODUCT to count duplicates. Hopefully this gets your gears turning to figure out some more interesting ways to combine these types of functions.